Apparently, Capcom is currently cooking up their biggest year of video games ever. This is according to a new report straight from them that I want to try and just dissect, because honestly, it sounds like we're about to get a lot of Resident Evil stuff, including possibly the Resident Evil 4 remake and the long talked about Resident Evil 8 DLC. Village DLC at last. But let's dig into the details, the facts, and their predictions specifically. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Now, please, if you could, subscribe. It really does help out. The channel is exploding, but please also like this video. Now, before we dig into stuff, I do want to quickly say I'm excited about the Resident Evil 4 remake. We're going to be talking about it here, but I am a little bit disappointed that we're not getting a Resident Evil Code Veronica remake, simply because I feel like this game gets never enough love. This is an underappreciated classic, but now let's talk about the facts themselves. So over here on Twitter, you can see I was just looking at the fact that recently this gentleman named Genkai Japan, has been tweeting out all sorts of financial reports from major gaming companies. Well, today, just about 1 hour ago, he discovered that Capcom is doing their earnings report, talking about not only how they keep being bigger and more successful, but they're expecting that this is about to be their biggest year ever. Now, this is actually really cool because if you look at this breakdown, it's pretty clear that something is about to happen. Over the course of the last 10 years, we've seen just this entire studio, this entire publisher, everything that Capcom touches just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Everything is just selling like crazy, and anybody who's been playing a lot of Capcom games knows that they are surprisingly fantastic. Devil May Cry 5 is a freaking masterpiece. Monster Hunter World blows my mind, and everything Resident Evil, I just want to eat it up. But here's what's interesting is that inside this just basically like investor breakdown, they said at the bottom here, we plan to release multiple major new titles and we anticipate record unit sales. We will expand our catalog sales globally via digital strategy. Now, what this means in basic speak is they're saying, hey, we have some huge games that are about to come out and we expect them to sell more than any of our games have ever sold ever. Now, what is it that could possibly build up that much hype, and when is it coming? Well, before we even leave this slide, we have a pretty good hint as to when this is going to be released. Inside here, it's broken down into quarters. So the fiscal year is not January to December. It's more like February or March to February. So we do know that as they talk about these breakdown quarters, this is coming up here, the fall, the winter, and then this is next year, early next year. So sometime in January and February, they're expecting a huge spike in sales. Now, why is this? Why would they be expecting to sell so much stuff? Well, typically, Capcom has been experimenting with releasing a lot of their survival horror stuff at the beginning of the year. A lot of people used to obsess about trying to nail that holiday season. You got to release your big AAA $100 million budget game in November or October, or else it's not going to sell. Well, Capcom has discovered that is wrong. If you make a good game, if you hype it up, if gamers are excited, they're going to buy it even if you drop it in freaking Valentine's Day. I mean, we've all bought games on Valentine's Day, but going on, here is what people are starting to predict. This is Direct Feed Games, also known as Nate the Hates. This guy has been doing a bunch of leaks, all sorts of stuff in the industry. Well, his prediction is the fact that we're going to get 4 separate things possibly. Street Fighter 6, which, you know, I'm not super hyped about. I'm not going to bag on Street Fighter 6. I'm just not really that much of a fighting game guy. I'll buy it, I'll review it, but here's the stuff that does get my blood absolutely cooking. Resident Evil Village DLC, Resident Evil Village Gold Edition, and Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now, these two things are technically just the same product, which is Resident Evil Village and Gold Edition. This is what they did for Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, and Resident Evil 7, which is where they release the game, they come out with some very, very, very good DLC that everybody agrees is fantastic, and then they release a special edition. So if you happen to be somebody who buys the game late, a lot of times you get the add-on content just thrown in for free. Now, this is smart because it gets people who are even late to the party to be very, very quick to adopt it, I say as I accidentally punch my copy of Code Veronica. Now, This all sounds very, very possible, but this Resident Evil 4 remake, you might be saying, why is it that everybody is guessing that specifically? Because that does seem very specific. You know, when you think about it, in all the wide world of possible projects, why is it that so many people are hitting specifically on Resident Evil 4 Remake? Well, there have been a bunch of leaks, including one I can't show you, which is the fact that Capcom got hacked. They got hacked, and some hackers decided to release a bunch of internal information, including a huge freaking swarm of emails. And inside those emails, it turned out that they said they're working on Resident Evil 4 Remake, and it's practically done. But now, what's interesting is that within this, there's also more talks about the fact that this Resident Evil 4 Remake is made to be extra scary. Why is it they're making this game bigger, spookier, crazier, much higher budget? Well, Resident Evil 4 already was a game that was incredibly fun. It's still considered to be one of the best games ever, but I've always considered it to be more action-focused. Apparently, this remake that they're doing of it is more focused on the survival horror aspects. They want it to be something that is going to terrify you, something that is going to get your blood pumping. They're also talking about expanding the side stories that were done with Assignment Ada. So it sounds like just all around, this is going to be a bigger, better project, which means higher sales. But additionally, why is it that we think it's going to be spookier? Well, along with the leaks, let's talk about this. So today Capcom just talked about its best-selling games of all time. So this is kind of interesting just because it sort of forecasts what's coming next. Even if you're not an investor in Capcom, like obviously I'm not, but it sort of paints the picture of what they're trying to do generally speaking. Well, their most popular game of all time is now Monster Hunter World. Keep in mind, this is their games ever, not just recent stuff. This is their games ever. Now, Resident Evil 7 is right underneath it with nearly 11 million sales. Well, what is it that a lot of people say about Resident Evil 7? I've seen the talk about the fact that Resident Evil 7 apparently scared a lot of gamers so much they were unable to beat it. People purchased it, they enjoyed it, they had fun, but the claustrophobic corridors, the save one bullet style of terror was apparently way too much for a lot of gamers. And yet, it just keeps selling. So I think that perhaps maybe they're starting to figure out the fact that horror games are better when they're horror-based. Keeping that terror, keeping that intensity, keeping that fear alive absolutely matters. But right beneath it, we do have the Resident Evil 2 remake, Monster Hunter World again, Monster Hunter Rise, Resident Evil Village, and Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, what's interesting about this is Resident Evil Village has only been out for 1 year. We're actually just passing its 1-year anniversary. It came out on May 7th, so in 1 year, selling 6.1 million units is incredibly impressive. I think it's pretty easy to guess that whenever they do release Resident Evil Village Gold Edition and that Resident Evil Village DLC, it is going to be incredibly popular. There's been so much talk about how Capcom realizes, okay, people want big monsters to slay, they want crazy, epic, huge expansions to our Monster Hunter games, and they want everything in the horror world to be spooky greatness. Resident Evil Village has been a tremendous success. I love the game quite a bit. I think I gave it a 9.5 out of 10 when I reviewed it, but I think this is all part of the beginning of making even more Resident Evil goodness. They're in the middle of doing a big crossover. Like, let me mute this video here, but check this out. They're about to do apparently a Wesker crossover in Dead by Daylight. That's freaking epic. Look, I'm thinking about playing Dead by Daylight for the first time just to try this out. That's seriously how hyped I am. So like this video if you want me to do a review of Dead by Daylight Resident Evil Edition. This is making me think that they are gearing up for something new and fresh and giant. Beyond just these sales, beyond just this year, I think that this is paving the way for the future of Resident Evil. There has been some talk that there are gamers that are not as excited for the Resident Evil 4 remake simply because they do want to see what new ideas are coming out. Not just remakes, not just retreads. What is the next chapter of Resident Evil going to look like? Where is Resident Evil 9? Now that, I feel like, is the very best question. I think we're going to see that stuff probably towards the end of 2023, but even now, June is probably going to be filled with surprises. This is normally when we have E3 month. Now we're having the Summer Games Fest. I predict, and you can put me on the record for this, we're about to see a lot of the Resident Evil 4 remake and the first real talk about Resident Evil Village DLC. So get ready and get hyped. Capcom is coming out swinging, and I think all of us are about to win. But tell me your thoughts in the comments down below, and tell me if you've actually heard about the rumors of a Resident Evil Outbreak remake as well sometime. Look, Resident Evil Online, I'm down for it. I'm down for it. But please tell me your thoughts in the comments down below, and please keep dreaming. Like this video and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.